Yes, it can have high return. I'm making 20 to 25% cash on cash for both of my short-term rental properties. It is not passive at all. It definitely takes a team to do it well. You can be creative. You don't always need to do short-term rentals to get a good return. Welcome to Fi Study Room, where we learn and achieve financial independence together. If you are ready to break free from the 9 to 5 and take control of your time, this is the right place. Quick note before we start. This episode is based on my personal experience and learning. It is not financial advice. So be sure to do your own research or talk to a pro if needed. Hi everyone, I'm your host PJ. Real estate has always been a really big part of my FI journey, and I've learned so much in the past 3 years. In the past 3 years, I kept trying different strategies and doing different things in real estate. I've had 2 short-term rentals, 2 long-term rentals, and flipped 2 houses. Today, I want to share my journey in short-term rentals and hoping that this could be helpful or interesting for those who are interested or just wanted to get started, or my fellow Airbnb hosts. The whole reason that when I was exploring my FI options or FI journey, I picked real estate to start with is that I had a very basic W-2 job. And I've heard so many times that people saying how real estate, being a landlord, owning different rental properties is passive. And that sounds like exactly something that I want to have, because I wanted to find something passive and I want to have cash flow every month. That sounds like a really, really good deal. And plus, I was just never really interested in studying stocks, understanding the industry or markets. So real estate seems pretty interesting. You get to own a real piece of land or real property, and if it goes well, you can get cash flow as well. However, in the past 3 years, I'll say that there are 4 things that I learned. 1, yes, it can have high return. 2, it is not passive at all. 3, it definitely takes a team to do it well. And 4th, you can be creative. You don't always need to do short-term rentals to get a good return. So in the next 30 minutes, I'll be talking about each of these lessons using real-life stories that happened to me while I was running my short-term rentals. And in the future episodes, I'll be talking about my long-term rental stories and also house flipping stories. Okay, lesson number 1, high return. Is it true that short-term rentals give high return? From my experience, it is true. I actually didn't really know what my cash on cash was until like 30 minutes ago, because I do tax every year and I know how much profit we're making, but I never actually calculated cash on cash. But when I did, it was quite surprising, and we're doing pretty well. I'm making 20 to 25% cash on cash for both of my short-term rental properties. So giving you some examples, so the property that I got is in Redding. Redding is a city in North California, and it's pretty famous for the mountains there and also some scenic nature stuff there. So people like to go there for holidays, and then obviously a lot of people live there. It's not a small city. So we got a bunch of guests just visiting from all over the place, visiting families there. And there is a really famous church there as well, which attracts guests from all over the world year round. I have 2 properties there. and they both cost somewhere around 350 to 400K. And I got both of them 3 years ago, which is 2022. So I'll give you some math to just show how much how much down payment I made, and then how much cash I put into the property and how much I make every year, and how we get to that 20 to 25% cash on cash. So cash on cash basically means that for every $100 that I put, every $100 cash I put initially, every year I'm getting $20 back. This means that in 5 years, I will get all my cash back, and everything after that is just pure profit. Okay, let's start with some real numbers. For both of my houses, the down payment is 10%. So I'll use the first property we got as an example. The property itself was $360K, but we got some lender credit, we got some seller credit at that time. So actually, when we started, we put in total $34K down, and we took 90%. 90% of property of the cost is loan, and we spent about $30K in furnishing. That's in total 64K. So that 34K that I mentioned also includes, apart from the down payment, it also includes the closing cost. So in total, that's like 64K cash, all cash, that we put up front for this property. And in the past 3 years, it's making around 13K net profit yearly. I'm not including depreciations for the property yet, because that's more for tax purpose. So I'm just talking about all the income, total revenue that we make from the rental minus all the expenses that we're spending every month. Using this number, we're getting, in the 3 years later, we're actually getting 20% cash on cash. The way you calculate it is simply you use the yearly profit, which is 13K, divided by 64K. So that's about 20%. That was actually just the cash return. I haven't looked into appreciation yet. So if I take a look at the appreciation on Zillow, the estimate for the property right now is 402K. And we bought it for 360K 3 years ago. So that's 11% of appreciation in 3 years. 40K in appreciation plus 13K average profit per year, and that was 3 years. So in total, we're looking at 79K return. And looking at the number this way, we've actually already got the cash investment back. And the other property that we have in Reading has a similar breakdown. If we look at the monthly income versus expenses, so how much we're actually getting per month from Airbnb and VRBO versus expenses, we're looking at, on average, revenue $6,000 per month. The peak is usually in summer, so where we have the highest revenue, that's around 10K. And in winter, we're looking at really slow seasons and bringing around 2,000 per month. So on average, that's about 6K. In terms of expenses, the highest expenses come from mortgage interest. That's about 17% of the total revenue. So we're paying 17% of total revenue goes into mortgage interest, and 15% goes to cleaners. So that's cleaning fee. That's actually a really, really big expenditure for short-term rentals. And for Reading, it requires short-term rental permit, like many other cities in the US. There is also a short-term rental tax every month. That's 12% on your gross revenue. So 12% goes to STR tax to the city. And then around 10 to 12% goes to utility. That's like your biggest 4 expenses bucket right there. If you happen to be in a city where you don't have to pay additional short-term rental tax, that's actually a blessing, because that way you're able to get so much more back. And another expenses, which a lot of the Airbnb hosts have, is property management fee. I know that in many places, it is one of the highest costs that you will have when running short-term rentals, especially when you are a remote host, and or you cannot just personally manage it yourself. The management fee can go as high as 20 or 25%. That is very scary if you add that in. If we had a property manager costing that much, we would not be making any money at all. Like it will be negative all the time. But for us, we are also not managing it ourselves, but we were able to get a pretty good local team, which is charging much less. So that's why the property management fee does not get into the top 4 buckets. Apart from monthly revenue and also expenses, tax is also pretty important. So far, we have not actually paid tax on any of this because of depreciation. And for rental properties, you can actually depreciate every year. The first year that you got the property, and when you report, you will set a number for yearly depreciation. And that number is dependent on how much you paid for the property minus the land value. IRS is saying is that in 27.5 years, your property will be worth nothing apart from your land value. So that's why you get to depreciate a little bit every single year for the next 27.5 years. Apart from this, there's actually one more tax advantage that short-term rental has, but not for long-term rental. It is cost segregation. The depreciation that I was talking about, it applies to all the rental properties. But cost segregation study is very specific for short-term rentals because in short-term rentals, you have a lot of furnitures and other personal properties inside of the house. So what it does is that it's telling IRS that, okay, there are a lot of other stuff in the house that we should depreciate as well. So when you do the cost segregation study, you are able to, of course, you're not doing it yourself. You're hiring a professional to do this. With that, you might be able to depreciate much more compared to other regular rental properties because you are including all the other personal property cost. And then you're able to depreciate them so much faster than your property itself. So sometimes you can depreciate it in the first year, or you depreciate it in the first 5 years or first 7 years. Overall, lesson 1 is that, yes, based on all my experience, short-term rentals does have a pretty high return, and I've been making 20 to 25% cash on cash since I acquired the property back in 2022. The numbers does make sense. Lesson number 2, there's always a myth saying that rental properties are generate passive incomes. But is it passive? My answer is that it is not passive at all, even if you hire a professional property manager. First of all, when you start, you have to do a lot of research. You have to pick the right market. You have to compare all the different opportunities. And when you try to take the first step, it's pretty hard and it takes a lot of research and effort to do that. And second, let's say that you acquire a property that meets your standard and meets your criteria. There are so many things comes after that gives you a lot of stress from time to time. I will also be sharing a few real life examples and stories that have happened to me and caused me stress from time to time. And hopefully that will be interesting for you guys. So let's start from picking the market and taking the first step. What happened to me was that when I first started exploring financial freedom, financial independence, I was actually looking for or searching for people who have the similar mindset. And I want to know what they're doing. So I came across one internal post actually, where one of my previous colleagues who have already quit his job at that time posted about his Airbnb experience. He and his girlfriend both have very similar mindset. They're doing exactly what I was trying to do. And they were sharing some pretty impressive outcomes that they've got from house hacking and Airbnb, their house in Reading. That's how I got started, actually. So I got in contact with him, and then he actually became the first realtor that we ever worked with. And then we were also his first client, because after he quit the job, he actually became a full-time real estate professional, and he helped us acquire our property, both of our properties in Reading. Yeah, we became pretty good friends starting from that. So if you ask me why I picked Reading as the market, I mean, a big part of the reason is probably because I got a contact there. So I know somebody who already got some success in that area. So I know that it will work. So it gives me a lot of confidence to start. But it doesn't mean that I didn't do any other research. So I actually looked into many other markets as well, and then trying to compare the risk and return. I remember that I even went to Joshua Tree to do a few house tour, just trying to see like what property would work there. Because there's a point when Joshua Tree is really, really popular as short-term rental market. And it was really booming there. The property prices increased so much since then. After all of the research and everything and talking to people, I decided to invest in Reading as the first step. And our first realtor helped us a lot in picking the first property and also the second. I think the whole process took a few months actually, but the whole idea of starting the real estate journey took even longer. If you count all the time that I spent in doing research, in looking for people who have done something like this and talk to them, it would have taken at least half a year just to prep for the first step. Okay, after you got the property, let's move into execution and operations of a short-term rental. There are so much stress from time to time. I'm gonna share, I would say, like the top interesting moments where I seriously doubted my decision of ever stepping into short-term rental. Number one, when your neighbor tries to report you. This actually happened after we acquired the second property. So I remember that I was staying in the house because we were trying to furnish the place. And then there were a few neighbors who came and knocked on the door and then started telling us that they're not okay with us having an Airbnb here. And then they started talking that there used to be a short-term rental down the street. And then the guests were really, really creepy and they had many kids on the street. So they were not okay with this. And they're going to report it to the city. And then they're going to just write to the city and saying that they're not okay with this. So the whole process, the way that it works in Reading is that once you apply for the permit, the city will actually send a letter to everyone on the street. And then if they don't hear back from anyone on any objection, I think 10 days maybe, then they will grant the permit. But if they did hear back, then it will be a different story. After hearing that, I was really, really worried because there's no way that I'm going to live in Reading. And this is the whole purpose that I got this property. If we're not able to do short-term rentals, what do we do? And I remember that it was super stressful and we were not sure what to do apart from just trying to convince the neighbors that it will definitely be okay. We're very responsible hosts. Me and my property manager will definitely reply to you, and I give them my phone number and also the property manager's phone number, and telling them then if there's any issue at all happened from the property, just reach out to us. It actually turned out to be okay because there was no objection filed against the application. So we actually got the permit for running an Airbnb there. And we have been running it for 3 years till now. But that was definitely stressful. Okay, the second moment, when your guest is not leaving. That was actually also a really interesting time. It's probably the most stressful time compared to the whole neighbor trying to report thing. In the first property, when we just started, I think a few months in, There is a guest who booked one night stay, and the second day, when it was time to check out, they didn't check out. And we sent our property manager, and our cleaners were actually waiting outside. They knocked on the door and nobody responded. And our property manager came and also knocked on the door, but nobody responded. And we were super, super worried. So we end up calling 911. And then we end up having police came out and trying to get them out from the property. And the guest finally opened the door in front of the police. They were a mess. Apparently, they were having a huge party the night before. And they were not fully awake even. And then they saw that they booked for 2 nights. But in reality, they only booked for 1 night. Because the police was there, so they eventually left the house. But they were threatening us on the platform and gave us a 1-star review, saying that how rude we were, trying to kick them out from the house, etc. All of these stories. It took us so much effort to even take that review down. And that was another story. It hurt us so much. That was not the end. The horror that they were not leaving is one thing. What happened after they left is another thing. Our cleaner got inside. The house is a complete mess. It was pretty horrifying to see what people can do to a place, how they trash the entire place. And the cleaner did their best to do all the cleaning, but it was already taking so much time, and the next set of guests were already waiting outside, and they have kids. We also had to give some refund to the next set of guests because we missed their check-in time. After they check in, their kids found some party stuff inside of the house in some corner. That was another horrifying story. So that entire experience was really terrible. Because the guests left us a really bad review, which is just completely unfair. We had to fight so much and then send all of the videotapes of how the guest was breaking the rules of throwing a party when it is clearly not allowed the night before to them, to Airbnb platform. So eventually, I think after a few months, we were able to take that review down, but within that few months, our listing was actually delisted because of the report from the guest. And we lost the revenue for those a few months. Thinking about that, it's amazing how we were able to get through that time while we still have a full-time job and worrying about all this stuff at the same time. The next moment where we were most stressful, and I was seriously adopting my decision of ever starting short-term rentals. That is when your cleaner does not show up. And it didn't just happen once, it happened several times. Every single time, it was such a terrible time. And just thinking about that, and then it feels like you're on a race where you're on a clock because the check-in time for the next set of guests is certain, and usually it happens on same day check-in, check-out. It happened a few times. Our check-in time is 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and there were a few times that the cleaner did not show up and not picking our calls and just no response whatsoever when it's almost 4 and the guest is already waiting outside or they're already in and then they're complaining why this place is not cleaned yet. I remember the time when this happened. My partner and I were so worried, and then I was calling the guest and then explaining the situation, trying to get them to understand. And then while they were complaining, the guest was complaining how tired they have been after traveling the entire day and they just want to get some rest and they were not able to get it. On the other hand, my partner is trying to call all the cleaners that we know and trying to get them to whatever they do, just trying to get them to come and do the job. And we were able to pay whatever they're asking. We're even going on different websites, trying to just get some cleaners and then trying just basically everything we can think of. That happened a few times, and then it was always a really, really stressful time. And that was also one of the reasons, I'll talk about this later, but that was also one of the reasons why it's so important to have a reliable local team. Otherwise, it could just turn into another nightmare. After all the stories, I guess you can already get the sense that even if you have a property manager, this is not a passive thing. It takes so much energy, and you can never predict what's going to come up. To recap, in this episode, we talked about the first two lessons I got from short-term rentals. It is an investment with high return, but it is not passive. In the next episode, I'll be talking about the next two important learnings I got from running short-term rentals for the past 3 years, which is it's very important to have a great and reliable local team. And last but not the least, for whatever reasons, if your short-term rental is not going well, there are other creative ways to do it to get similar returns. All right, see you next week.